Hello everybody, welcome to the webinar of conversations and collaboration within CXO-Cockpit. My name is Marcel and Martijn. I will present the webinar to you today. I've prepared this webinar together with Martijn Rademaker. And what I will do first, I will first show you the agenda of today and what we're going to discuss. I will give you a short introduction on how the conversation and collaboration within a lot of companies nowadays work and what we're actually trying to reach within CXO-Cockpit. And what we will cover is we will cover the commenting functionality. We will cover the basics, but not too much. I guess you're already familiar with that. But I also want to show you, for instance, how you can use the line item comments in a proper way and how you can actually share line item comments within different reports to have a nice overview of your comments. We will also cover the conversations and the collaboration part within CXO-Cockpit. Conversations are mainly about our new functionality that you can really start a conversation, a chat within the cockpit. Just to discuss some small matters and just a bit more informal compared to our regular commenting functionality. And the last part of this webinar is about the storyboards, and I think you're also familiar with the storyboard functionality. I will just create an ordinary storyboard and share that with another person inside our cockpit. But I will also show you how you can use the scripted storyboard, so we get a bit more advanced regarding the storyboards. First of all, quick overview about how you see that the traditional process is working in regard to the collaboration. What you often see is that people look at different types of data when they are commenting on the data. So therefore you see different persons in this overview, and you see that they are all looking to their own data. The question is always, are they looking to the same data? Well, if they are using the cockpit, then the answer is yes. If they're using the same report, then they will be using the same data. But what you also often see is that still a lot of collaboration and conversation is taking place over phone, or by means of using email, just sending comments about the different reports via email. The problem with that, or the issues that we see, is that that also means that the data is often disconnected, and by that we mean is that people are not looking at the same report, so there is actually a bit of miscommunication. We also see is that when comments are being sent in Word documents, for instance, by email, that the commenting is not centralized but decentralized. Comments are everywhere. You might have version problems. You don't know what the latest version of your commenting document is. And the last thing is that it's also a risk of data loss with regard to your comments. Might be that you just get lost in your mail and that you don't know what the latest version was, or for instance, previous period of comments. We try to make this process a bit more structured inside CXO. So first of all, we want you, of course, to look at the same data. So therefore, you can set up your reports within the cockpit and make sure that everybody looks at the same numbers. But what we also try to do is that we try to integrate the commenting function in the cockpit, so that next to the data, to your financial data, you can also have a look at your comments in the same report. So before we only had our regular commenting functionality, so with the comment box at the bottom. But we also try now to integrate conversation functionality, a chat functionality inside the cockpit, and therefore we released this commenting or this chat functionality in our previous version, and we just would like you to show how that actually works within the cockpit. Well, the advantage of using the commenting functionality and the conversation functionality in the cockpit is that, of course, you have a shared view of the data because you're using the same reports. but you also make sure that comments are centralized. You place your comments next to your data inside the report, and the comments are nicely stored inside the cockpit, so in a central place. It's more secure because the comments can only be displayed to people having access to the report, and that have access to a certain point of view, so for instance to a certain entity. And besides that, you also have a nice audit trail where you can see who entered which comment at what time. So you can exactly see what changes have been made to the comments. You will also be able at the end of your period to log the comments. We now distinguish two different types of comments within the cockpit. So I'm really talking about our regular commenting functionality, and that is that we are talking about the line item comments that can be entered on line items, on row items in a report. So you see here in this example, this is great, so it has been entered there as a comment. And we have our regular commentary function, which is displayed in the comment box, which you most of the time have at the bottom of your report. Maybe you place it at another position, that's also possible. But this is really about the comment box, and the comment box can be either completely empty or can already contain a certain narrative template, and that is what you see on the right side. With a narrative template, you actually use a template in which you can be a bit more directive in the way how users should enter their comments. I'm now going to my demo application, in which I'm just going to show you this functionality, and I will use certain examples to show you how you can use it. So I go to my my cockpit application, and the first thing I do is I go to my commentary report, and the one that I want to use is this one, because in this one you see I have a nice example with line item comments. So a user is able to enter the comments over here on the right side, and as you can see when I hover over the different lines of this report, you see that it is already being marked that I can click and edit to enter the comments. What is also nice, and that I will show you later on, is that this report is actually already showing you as a user where you should enter the comments. So for that, this column is being used, and you see explain the larger than minus 10% difference, for instance, in this case. What you will also see is when I change the point of view, that this works dynamically. So that, for instance, for September, we only see cost of goods sold. So it really looks at your data, and in case your September data is the difference is bigger than 10% compared to your budget data, this line is being displayed. In this case, what I'm going to do is I go to the United States of America, and I'm going to enter here a line item comment. And for now, I will just simply call it gross margin USA. As soon as I click in another cell, this comment is being stored. And it works the same with the comments here at the bottom in the comment box. This comment is now stored on this point of view. So that means that the period at this moment is August. So this comment is only stored for August. So as soon as I change to, for instance, September, you will see that my comment is gone. So that works exactly the same as with the comment box here at the bottom. What we did before we started this webinar is that we actually connected this report to another report. And that other report is available here in storytelling. And we gave it almost the same name, but there is one difference, and it is also about conditional line item comments, but it is per entity. So what you will see when I open up this report is that we have the entities here in the rows. So that's the difference. What you can now see is that when I select the proper account, that you will see the comment that I have entered in the original report. So at this moment, the gross sales is being selected, but I've entered my comment on gross margin. So I'm now selecting here in the item selector gross margin. And what you will see is that this comment that I just entered is now also being displayed in this report. This is actually quite a powerful function because you can make sure that comments being entered on different levels inside your organization can be displayed in one overview, in one report. So you can imagine that also other entities, other continents have entered comments, and all of them will show in this report. So you can have a nice overview of all your comments being entered, in this case regarding the gross margin. What I want also do is I will use the comment box at the bottom, and for that I go to China, and I will use here this button. Simply press edit and we get the ordinary comment box. I can now just simply enter a text, but I can also enter an image, and that is what I'm going to do right now. I will just simply add an image. So I've put an image on my desktop, which is a nice image regarding China. And I'm opening that image. I leave the dimensions as is. And I've now entered this image in this comment box. If I press save, you will see that this image is now being presented in this report. This is one way of adding some additional information, so you can make a print screen and just simply add it in a comment box. You can also add a file as an attachment. There was another option, but we also have the option just to simply enter an image inside the comment box. We can enter also text, so we can make a combination. Comments for China in this case. And now I save this comment as well. So we now have just a written comment, and we have that image. If I now move back to our previous report, I go to commentary and to the original report, I can show you that this comment that we have entered on that other report is now also visible over here. So as you can see, the point of view is the same. We're looking at China, and therefore the comments entered at China are now also visible over here. So this is an easy way actually to connect different reports with each other, and then show the comments on each of those reports. I can show you how I've done that inside the designer. So I go now to the designer. We have changed the look and feel of the application a bit. So before we had CXO designer, but now as you can see, we just have this little button over here. But with that button, we also enter the CXO designer. And I can go to this original report, conditional line item comments. And now I can go to the comment functionality. And what we have actually did over here is that first of all we have made sure that the right and the same dimensions have been added to the narrative key. So that means that the comments are really stored in this case on the entity member, the year member, and the period member. And the second thing that we need to do we go to the other report. We also go to comments, and you see that over here the narrative key is exactly the same. So that is the first thing you need to do. And the second thing is that over here under master narrative report, we actually pointing towards that original report. So we connected those two reports, and by doing that we make sure that the comments either being entered in the first report or in this report will be displayed in both reports. So it doesn't really matter in which report you enter the comments, they will simply display in the other report. If you have any questions during this webinar, we have an option to enter questions. So we will cover them. And I think it's just best to run through those different questions at the end of the webinar. I now go simply back to the front end. And before I do that, I just want to show you one last thing, which also might be of interest to you. And that is, you might wonder how you can create such kind of messages that users should actually enter comments for certain line items. For that, I go to my column list. And for that, we actually use a cube calculation, which is called CXO_remark20. And if I open up this cube calculation, you will see that, well, we have a little condition in case the budget is 0, then nothing actually happens in the column. But it's actually about this part. And what we do is we simply have a look at what the difference is, what the percent difference is, the variance. And then we look whether that difference is larger than 20% or smaller than minus 10%. And if so, then we just provide this text in case it's larger than 20%, and this text in case the difference is smaller than a minus 10%. So that is a way to display text in the cockpit. I have to say this only works if you're in case your source system accepts text. So for instance with HFM or Tagetic, this works. We make use of an SSAS cube that accepts text. For instance with SBase this doesn't work because SBase simply doesn't allow text in the cube. I now go back to the front end, and the last thing I would like to show you regarding the ordinary comments is the narrative templates that we can use. I know that we have other functionality available, and that is that we can copy comments from a previous period to the current period, for instance. I will cover that later during this webinar. So in the end, we will explain everything regarding the comment functionality. But for now, I want to show you one last report. We call that one the workflow comments report. The report is now empty because we didn't enter any comments yet. But this report is actually making use of a narrative template. So for that, we just go here to the edit option, and a narrative template pops up as soon as you click on edit. So in this case you see that we have created several columns and several rows, and everything works now the same as with an empty comment box. You can just start typing. So I now click in the first cell and I can just enter my name, for instance. So I will enter Marcel. I can enter what my row is. I just simply use the tab now on my keyboard, and I can indicate that I am a controller, and I can indicate in this case that I have completed the task of providing comments. So the date complete, I will use the date of today, 2017. So this is a way how I can indicate that I've entered all my comments that I want to enter, that I'm done, at least I'm done. And now as soon as I save the comments, you see that the comment, including the template, is being saved. We can create templates for you if you want that. It's just making use of HTML. So if you're familiar with that yourself, you can also create those templates yourself. How do they look like? For that I go to the designer again, First of all, I go to the report and I will show you where you can indicate what narrative template should be used. And as you can see over here, we have the option narrative template, and here you can select what type of template you would like to use. If I double click, you will see that in this application we have several narrative templates available, and that the commentary collection template is now being used. So simply select the template over here, and then as soon as a user clicks on edit for the comments, the template pops up and the user can enter the comments inside the template. If we go to shared objects and narrative templates, you will see as an admin the overview of the narrative templates that have been created. So in this case, the commentary collection that we just used is being displayed on the right side. But this is just the first narrative template that is being created in this application. We have more templates available. And on the right side, you immediately see the template. You can start changing your template. You can go there to a source code view, and in the source code view you actually see the HTML that is being used to create this template. So when we implement the application, we often make sure that you have like a few standard templates available. I'm not really familiar with HTML, but I understand that if I copy certain parts, that I can create new boxes or new columns. That's not that difficult to understand. But if you want to have something more advanced, then you can also send us an email, and then we can create that template for you. And we make sure that we implement the template together so that you can just make use of that template that you want. I want to move on now to the second part of this webinar. And the second part is really about the conversations and the collaboration within CXO-Cockpit. And for that, we have actually come up with 3 different stories for today. A business-driven question that we would like to discuss inside the cockpit. We have comments that we have to make sure that they have been provided by all the different subsidiaries, because we have a certain deadline for the comments. So that is the second story. And the last story is that we just want to work together with 2 persons on a certain storyboard. And nowadays that's also possible. You can work with different people on one storyboard. You can edit that storyboard, and you can share that storyboard with other people. So that is the last story that I want to show you regarding the conversations and collaboration. So first of all, we are now working in our demo application, which is Comma Communications. I want to show you how the real-time collaboration works with our conversation functionality. And here on the right side, you see the people involved in the company at this moment regarding the figures, which is our group CFO, Olivia Johnson. We have Mu Lee, who is the Vice President of Finance for Asia. And we have myself, who is also involved. So I'm first going to discuss the business-driven question story. So what we will see in the demo application is that China is low on cash flow in September, and we actually need to find out why. For that, I go back to the demo application. I go back to the cockpit. What you now see in the right top corner is that you see those you see actually one next to the chat, and it actually means that I have received a conversation and that I did not read that conversation yet. So I can click on that, and then I can simply click on the conversation that have been sent to me, which is regarding China and the cash decrease in China. So I click now on that conversation. And the good thing is that the report about this conversation is immediately opened, and we see the conversation of our CFO, Olivia. And as you can see, she's actually asking me what is happening at this moment in China because of a huge decrease in cash at this moment. You can immediately see that in this report. So what Olivia did is she not only selected the proper point of view, and she for instance set it on periodic, but she also selected a certain item in this report, and she drilled here on the right side on Asia, so that we can see that indeed we have a huge decrease in cash for actuals for September 2016, and that a huge decrease is actually coming for the most part from Asia. So we immediately see that something is actually happening in China. So the report is actually automatically opening under correct point of view. It selects the correct item in the rows to collect the correct drill, and we actually need to find out what is happening. She's asking me that question, but honestly, I don't know why that is happening. So I have to contact my colleague from Asia, Mr. Mu. So what I will do first of all is I will add a participant to this conversation. So as you can see, we're now in the conversations tab, and maybe you're used to your point of view comments and your subsidiary comments, but now we are really in the conversations tab. And the conversations tab, if you click on the edit button, you see that we can add a participant to this already existing conversation. So that is what I'm going to do right now. And I will select Mu Li as the participant that I want to add to this conversation. I simply click on add, and now we see that we have 3 participants that are in this conversation: myself, Mu Li, and Olivia Johnson. And now I can just start typing here below. So, hi Mu, can you explain what is happening in China? And I send now this conversation. So you see now it is quite clear that this conversation is coming from me. And what I will do right now is that, as you will see here at the bottom, is that I have one other browser open, and that browser I will use to log in as Mu, and to show you what he actually sees when he is opening the cockpit. So I go to the browser, my username is now Mu, and I log in as Mu. And now what you will see is that also Mu has a conversation here on the right top corner. So also he can click now on this conversation. He goes automatically to the correct report, and he see both the conversation of, or both messages of Olivia and myself. So now he can start having a look at the report and give an explanation. So in this case, in this report, you see that the accounts receivables are quite high. I can click on it, you see that the trend is changing, and also here the drill on the right side is now based on the accounts receivable. And you also see that the short-term investments are really high. So Mu actually knows what is going on. So Mu will now just reply. The reasons are, you can now simply enter, and then the message is already sent, or you can use the shift enter function, and then you just go to the next row here in your conversation. And then we will write that the accounts receivable is high. So that is the first remark you would like to make. So I'm now just clicking on enter, or I can press enter, or I can click here send, and then that message is being sent. And I would like to add one more thing about the short-term investments. So a shop has just been opened in China, and therefore the short-term investments at this moment in this month is high. If I press enter, you see that it just adds to the conversation that I've already shared with Marcel and Olivia. So this is a way how I can just reply. Now I go back to myself, to Marcel, and you immediately see that the conversation is also being displayed over here. So instead of sending messages, for instance, by email, you can also now use the conversation function inside the cockpit. These conversations are not only visible to Olivia, Mu, and also myself. Nobody else can see this conversation. So it's really personal. You can decide who you want to invite. Other persons will not be able to see your conversations. If I just go to another report and go back to this report, you will see that also by default, the conversations are actually not displaying. So you only see the point of view comments and the subsidiary comments. Conversations are really only accessed by making use of the option here in the right top corner. And now you can see that we have the conversations back again in this report, and you can see the conversations. So this was my first example of how you can use the conversation functionality. I go back now to my second story. So we explained why the cash flow was low in China. And what we do over here is that we need to make sure that we have our comments from Asia in before the deadline. So Mr. Mu was actually quite late on providing his comments. So for that, I'm using the conversation function again, and Mr. Mu will use our regular commenting function just to provide the comments. So I go back to the demo application. I will go to the profit or loss, and I will go to this profit and loss report. And as you can see, we have got some comments for South America and for Europe. But if I go to Asia, you see that I don't have any comments yet for Asia. So I need to make sure that Mu will enter the comments for Asia. So that is what I'm going to do right now. I will start a new conversation, and that you can do with this button over here, Start New Conversation. I can enter a topic, in this case comments for Asia, it's urgent. And I can add a participant, well, that we have done before. So in this case, again, I enter, or I select Mu Li as the participant. That is the only participant, and I can start my conversation now. Comments for Asia, urgent. And then we're just going to write a message to Mu. Can you please provide the comments of Asia for September, end of business day. We send this message, and now I go back to Mu. So we'll use the different tab over here where we are logged in as Mu. We see that we have a new conversation. I click on it, and we just see the conversation I have entered, so the new message. You will get a notification in the right top corner that you've received a message, a conversation. If you are not in the cockpit and you do not look at a conversation within 5 minutes, a message to your email will be sent that you have received a new conversation in the cockpit. So also there you can immediately see that you've received a message. You can simply click on the link, and then this particular report with this comment will open. In this case, I'm going to have a look now at the comments that we have, and what we will see is that if I go to China point of view comments, it's still empty, but we do have comments here already on China sales, and those comments I actually want to use. And if I go to Asia, we also see that everything is empty for Asia, but if I go to the previous period, we see that for the previous period we do have comments. And luckily for Mu, the situation is the same, so he can copy those comments for Japan and Singapore from the previous period. So I go back to September, and instead of just typing in my comments with edit, I also have the option over here to copy the comments from the previous period. So that is what I'm going to do right now. I'm a bit lazy, but I can copy the comments from the previous period. So we see now the comments for Japan and Singapore. The last thing I would like to do is I would like to copy the comments that we had on China sales. I would like to copy them also to this point of view, so to Asia. So also over here, I can use this button again, the pencil. And we have here the option copy base to point of view comments. I click on that one, and now you see that we see the comments that we had on China sales now also on this point of view on Asia. We can still change the comments, so I can click on edit. I can go here and I, for instance, can change the header for China sales into China. I can make sure that we have an underscore, an underline, and in this case I'm not really interested in this image. So I can simply remove the image and save the comment. So now we have our comments final. We're satisfied with it. We have done it immediately, so I can just type back to Marcel that I've entered and that I've provided the comments. I'm now going back to myself. So this is the last time I'm switching, so I go back to my different browser. I see that Mu has indicated that the comments have been provided. I can check that for Asia. So I can go to Asia and see that the comments have been entered. After I'm satisfied with it, I will do one last thing, and in this case, because those comments are already final, I want to log the comments, and the log functionality is nowadays over here in the right top corner. Before it was also available over here, but we've moved it to the top, and it's now clearly visible that the comments have not been logged. The log is open. But I can log the comments for, in this case, Asia, and then you will see that the icon is changing, logged. I cannot change the comments anymore. And I would also like to log the comments for the descendants of Asia. That is also something that I can do over here. So log descendants, that is the last step I need to do. So it's always two steps. First log the entity itself and then log the descendants to make sure that all entities of Asia are being logged in this case. So log descendants. I can double check. I can, for instance, go to Japan and I can check whether I can change the comments over here. That is not possible. I can only view the history. So all comments have now been locked for Asia. So this is actually the final situation that I wanted to have. The thing that I can still do is I can still view the history. It is still quite powerful. You can see what changes have been made. So you can see that I have locked the comments, but you can also see what Moo just did. You see the time. You can also see the previous states of the comments. So you really can have a clear overview of what actually happened with regards to your comments. The last thing I want to show you regarding the conversations and the collaboration is the new way in which we nowadays share our storyboards. So before you needed to send out actually a URL, and the person that you sent that URL to really needed to click on that URL to actually insert that storyboard in his or her user account. That is not really necessary anymore. We have upgraded the functionality. You can now simply share the storyboard inside the cockpit. You will receive a notification here in the right top corner under this bell, and you can also make sure that now more than one people can be in control of the storyboard, so you can work together on a storyboard. So that is something that we have recently updated. So first of all, I'm going to create a new storyboard. I will call it storyboard webinar. It's just empty yet, but let's just simply add two different reports to it, the profit and loss. I'm fine with that, so I'm going to add this report first. So I'm going to select the storyboard webinar, the one that we have just created. We have a few new options here at the bottom. We have some printing options. We can indicate whether, in case you print this storyboard, you would like to use portrait or landscape, and whether you would like to use the page scaling. So we can make sure that everything fits now on one page by selecting this third option. Yeah, showing comments is fine in this case, so I add this report to the storyboard. We get a message that this has been done successfully. So the second report I would like to add is the balance sheet report, but that is actually something that I want Moo to do. So what I would do right now is I'm going to share this storyboard with Moo. And for that, I go to storyboards, and we have the option share here. We get a small pop-up, and over here you see that there is only one person having access to this storyboard. That is me, and that I'm actually king, and that means that I can do everything. So I can change this storyboard, I can share the storyboard, but I can also remove the storyboard. I'm now going to add two new users. First, I'm going to add Moo to the storyboard, and you see that we have three different options. I want to make Moo actually now an editor, and that means that he can also change the storyboard. He can remove reports from the storyboard. He can add reports to the storyboard. He's not a king, and that means that he will not be able to remove the storyboard. So that is still in control of me, but I make him editor. And I'm going to add another user, and that is Olivia. She asked for us to for this storyboard, so she's not really bothered with changing or creating the storyboard. She only wants to view this storyboard. So that is the thing that I'm selecting for her, the viewer role. So that means that she can only view this storyboard. I save the changes. And now we have shared this storyboard. So I go now to Moo again. So go to my different browser where Moo is logged in. And we see now indeed that we have a notification. I click here and we see that we now have a storyboard that's being shared by Marcel. Can click on that storyboard, and that storyboard now opens. And as you can see, we can edit the storyboard. The only thing is we cannot delete it. The option is normally over here on the right side, but I'm not able to delete this storyboard. What I will do right now is I will just simply add another report to it. I will go to the balance sheet. I use this bookmark button here to add the report to the storyboard. I select the storyboard to which I want to add this report. I can indicate at what position I should add this story or this report. I want to insert the report after the report I already added, so the profit and loss report. So insert page after profit and loss. Again, I can indicate how I would like to print the report in case we print a storyboard. In this case, I don't want to show any comments, so comments will not be displayed when printing. And I add this report to the storyboard. I go back now to the storyboard, and we see that the storyboard now contains two different reports. Our profit and loss report, which has been entered by Marcel, and the balance sheet report, which has been entered by Mo. This is just simply the way how you, I think, normally create a storyboard. So you just simply use the bookmark button to add different reports. I think that is pretty straightforward. The way how we share storyboards, that is now different. It's a bit more convenient. Everything actually happens inside the cockpit. You don't have to send out emails anymore. What I want to do right now is I want to cover the last part of this webinar, and that is that I want to show you how you can create a scripted storyboard. I've here inserted a link, and that link goes to our wiki page, because our wiki page actually contains a great overview of scripts that you can use in scripted storyboards. What are scripted storyboards? Well, the scripted storyboards are storyboards that can be created by just using a little script. And I will show you certain examples of how you can create your storyboard. Why do we use scripted storyboards? Well, most of the time it's simply faster to create a scripted storyboard instead of just manually creating a storyboard and manually adding different reports to that storyboard. I think that after I show you how you can create a scripted storyboard, that it is clear that in some cases a scripted storyboard is really the preferred way of creating a storyboard. So I go back to my browser, and I already have here my scripted storyboard site open. You can just go to our wiki page, and you can search for scripted storyboards, and then you see that we have a page just about this scripted storyboards, and this page contains different examples of how you can use certain scripts to generate storyboards. The first step now in the demo is that I'm going to use the existing storyboard that I've created, and I will make sure that that storyboard will be a scripted storyboard. So I go to my storyboards, and we have here the storyboard webinar that I just created, and I can use the copy function just to copy this storyboard. And what I can actually do is I can tick this button, and as soon as I tick this button, you see that we have a script code. So it's automatically translating our storyboard, our existing storyboard in a piece of script, and a piece of script automatically works. So it simply says that it needs to run two different reports. It's also indicating what should be displayed on top of the reports, like the title, and it's also indicating how the report should be printed, so the print mode. I save now the storyboard, and you see that we now have two different storyboards with the same name. One is with the copy in the name, and we now see here the little symbol after the name, and that actually indicates that this is about the scripted storyboard. In case I want to edit this storyboard, I have to click here on edit, and then I go back into that scripted storyboard mode again. And the first thing I want to do in this scripted storyboard is I want to make sure that this storyboard automatically runs for the entity Asia. So for that I can just type switch and, because we're talking about the dimension entity, and I can write Asia. As soon as I write this in front of the reports that I want to run, the reports that are run are just being generated for Asia. So I can save now my storyboard. I can use this play option, play. You will see that no matter what I actually do, this storyboard always runs for Asia. It's now on October. That is something that I also would like to change. But also the next report in my storyboard is on Asia. If I close now my storyboard and go back to the edit mode, I can also, for instance, say that I would like to run this storyboard for period September, and that I would like to run this storyboard for year 2016. So these ones are really the abbreviations that you also normally use in your MDX calculations. And the names I'm using over here are really the member names. So just make sure that you use the correct name, put it in between quotes, and this storyboard will be run for those members that you specified. I can check the script. You see here that it is correct. And I can save my storyboard now. And now I run my storyboard again. Simply click on play. And you see now that the storyboard is generated for September, so not for October anymore, but for September for 2016, and indeed for Asia. You can go to the next report, and also the next report is still on September and Asia. The last thing I would like to do is I would like to insert in the report title, in the title that is being displayed on top of the report in my storyboard, I would like to insert the entity name. And you can simply do that by also specifying the dimension like this here in the title. So I do that for both reports. I just add end to it in between the square brackets. I save now my storyboard. I run my storyboard again. And you will see that we don't have only now profit and loss and balance sheet. It also takes into account the entity that has been selected. So you see that for both reports, Asia is now being displayed at the top of my report. I want to go one step further, and I want to generate a bit more reports inside my scripted storyboard, and for that I'm going to use an example that is available on our wiki page. So I scroll down and I go to to this example, example 4. And what you can see here is that you can actually make sure that certain children are being used for generating reports inside the storyboard. So I'm just going to simply copy this, paste it in my scripted storyboard, and then I will explain how it works. So I go back to my demo application. I exit my storyboard because I want to change it right now. I'm going to edit my storyboard. And I'm going to paste this little script that I just took from our website, from our wiki page. Just going to paste it over here. What I do in this little piece of script is that I indicate for which entities I would like to run this this storyboard, and in this case I would like to use Asia again, so not Europe. I'm going to change it into Asia, and what I'm actually saying is that this report, the profit and loss, should be generated, should contain a report for all the children of Asia. In this case that means that we will have for instance Japan and also China. And the way how we do it is that we actually specify what the children of Asia are in this first line, and we group them under this end1. This end1 we just simply came up with. You can come up with any name you want. The only thing you need to make sure is that in the switch you also use that same description. So this one and this one should always be the same. You see that we have written here entity. That also works. You can also use the abbreviation, so end. So let's be a bit consistent. I'm just using end over here. I'm just going to copy those two reports that we have just been using, and I want to use them also over here. So I'm going to paste it over here. So I will also now generate those two reports that we initially manually added to the storyboard, but we're gonna run those reports for the different children of Asia. I'm gonna check my script. It is correct. I'm gonna save the storyboard. And what you see now in my storyboard is that we have more reports because we have the profit and loss on the balance sheet for all the children now of Asia. And you also see that it's quite convenient that we actually use the entity name in the title of those reports, because now it's obvious that the first one is really about the parent Asia, the first two ones, and then we have two reports for Japan, two reports for Singapore, and two reports for China. So this is really a quick way to generate a storyboard for different children of a certain entity, and it might be also useful when you want to generate a print of a storyboard. So you don't have to manually add all the different children. You can just simply use the scripted storyboard, and then we have a storyboard that contains all the reports of those children. What is also quite useful is that sometimes people really don't want to make a selection when they run a storyboard. And by that I mean, if I use here the play option, you get a pop-up and you need to select the correct period and year. Sometimes that is a bit difficult for users to understand, that they really have to click here on period and then select the period. So what you can also imagine is that you create a storyboard for a group of users, you share that storyboard with that group of users, and that you are still in control of that storyboard, so that you can simply change the period with that needs to be used when opening the storyboard. So in this case, if I click on edit, we have selected that September should be used when opening the storyboard. I can now simply select August. I save this storyboard, and now everybody that opens this storyboard will be using August. I don't have to select anything. I just simply press on play. And then we see now that the storyboard is being opened on August. So that might be something that you can do as an admin. You can set the period, or maybe you can set something else, another dimension member. and that is then simply applied to all the different reports in that storyboard. So you don't have to add all those reports again with August being selected. No, you can only use the switch option in the scripted storyboard, and then that storyboard opens with that particular member. The last option that I want to show you regarding the storyboards is that we also have a new option inside the designer. So for that I go to designer, we can go to tools, and we can go to application settings. It's a bit hidden, but we have this option nowadays over here, storyboards. And if you tick this option, the use current period by default, that actually means that the period that is selected at that moment in a report when the storyboard is being opened, that period is being used in the storyboard. I will show you how that works. So we have now selected this option. In this report, September is now being the period selected. You remember that the storyboard actually now says that it should be opening with August, but if we select this option, then it actually overrides that. So if I now go to storyboards, I play my storyboard, you see a pop-up, and you automatically see that the year and the period are ticked, and that the year and period are on the members that are selected in this current report that is currently open. If I now play the storyboard, you see that the storyboard is automatically being opened for 2016 as September. So also that is a way that you can make sure that users do not have to select anything in the pop-up, but that the storyboard is automatically generated for a certain period and for a certain year. In this case, the period and year that are selected in the report that is open when the storyboard is being started. This actually brings me to the end of my story, of what I wanted to show to you. I'm now looking at the questions that have been asked, so let's see if there are still some questions that need to be answered. Yeah, so the first question is that there was about the conditional commenting we had. So you see in this case that actually for every line, the comment over here, or the indication what should be done is the same. So you all the time see explain. The question is, can that message be different for different items in the rows? And the answer is yes, that can be different, because in your cube calculation, you can use another case when statement to indicate, for instance, for cost of goods sold, what should be displayed. So you can make your cube calculation a bit more advanced. You can specify you can name your line item with a case when statement, and then you can indicate what the text should be for that particular line item. The second question is it possible in a report to combine two different sources? The answer is simply yes. You can use two different sources. You can imagine that, for instance, in this report, information for budget is coming from a different source. The cockpit report simply pulls the data then from two different sources, but then still commenting functionality works. So you can enter the comments in this report. Everything works exactly the same, also in the comment box here at the bottom. But then, it just works exactly the same as that I just showed you. If it also works for S-based sources, this also works for S-based sources. Again, the text for S-based sources doesn't work, so that's important. S-base, the S-base cube doesn't allow for text in the cube, so that won't be possible. Yeah, there is also a question about how to set up the email notification. I think that's a bit more of a technical question. That is something that we do under users. I think that it is best that I will send some information after this webinar regarding that. I will send it to you, Yoon, and then you can see if it is clear to you how that works. And otherwise, I can just set up a call with support, and they are happy just to assist you in doing so. Yeah, so regarding the dynamic storyboards with the scripted storyboards, is there a list of commands? The answer is yes, those commands can be found over here. I think this site gives you a pretty good overview of all the things that you can use. We have entered certain, or we have included certain examples, but all those examples really cover the scripts that you can use. So I think that if you just have a look over here, try things out, and see whether it works for you. And if you still have any questions afterwards, if it doesn't work for you, we are happy just to assist you. But I think this site gives you a good overview of the different commands that you can use for scripted storyboards. I'm just looking at the other questions that we received, so one moment. Yeah, that's a good question. It's about, can that scripted storyboard being used also when you use different sources? And the answer is yes. What you then actually do is you indicate from which source you would like to run your report. So you specify your source, and then the next step is you specify your report. So, but the answer is yes, you can use the scripted storyboards also when you want to include reports from different sources. Okay, I think that we have covered all questions. Maybe there are some really particular questions, and that we will also answer after this webinar. So we will be in contact about that. I thank you all for joining this webinar. I hope it was clear. If you do have any questions after this webinar, you can just send an email to us to support@cxocockpit.com, and we make sure that we answer your questions. Thank you for joining.